Knock, knock, knock. I sighed. It had been a long Monday, and I was hoping that no new clients would seek out my services. Oh well, it's what I signed up for. Come in, I said, trying to conceal the annoyance in my tone. The door squealed loudly on its hinges. I winced at the sound. I really needed to have those lubricated. A disheveled man trudged into the room and sank into the chair opposite from me. His hair was a tangled rat's nest of greasy brown locks. Dark purple bags hung low under his eyes. Sullen defeat was written across his visage. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. Look, Detective. Baxter. Claxton. Close, though. And you are. Detective Claxton. Sorry. My name is Louise. Well, it's nice to meet you, Louise, I said, flashing him a grin and reaching over the desk to extend a hand. He tentatively accepted it. So, Detective Claxton, I really need your help. I pursed my lips. I really need your help. I'd heard those 5 desperate words more times than I could count. I wondered what it would be this time. Cheating girlfriend was my leading guess. Okay, what's the issue? The man shuffled in his seat, suddenly taking a particular interest in his shoes. Nothing could have prepared me for what he would say next. I think my wife is a demon. I stared at him blankly, mouth agape. Was this some sort of joke? Did this guy escape from the loony bin or something? He seemed genuine, but I couldn't be sure. Did I hear that correctly? You said you think your wife is a demon? Yeah, that's right. Look, I know this sounds absolutely unhinged, and you don't have to believe me, but she's been getting more. How do I put this? Sinister. I get this really terrifying feeling whenever I'm around her. She stopped going to church, and she's been staying out all night long. All she tells me is that she's going to see a friend. I've been too scared to question it. That might not sound too bad, but Jessie has always been very religious. She used to be the pinnacle of righteousness. I need to know what's going on. I'm at the end of my rope here, Louis said, locking eyes with me. A pang of guilt struck my chest like a lightning bolt. He looked so broken. I could tell that he really cared about his wife and that the whole ordeal had taken a huge toll on him. But I couldn't bring myself to do it. I'm sorry, but I can't take your case. My last run-in with the occult nearly killed me. I can't put myself through something like that again. But I just want you to follow her. You won't need to have any kind of interaction at all, unseen and unheard. I sighed. He wasn't taking this how I'd hoped. Sir, I can't help you. It's nothing personal, but I have a strict no-demon policy. It's just not something I can accommodate for. He nodded, dejectedly standing and pushing the chair back in place. He took 2 steps toward the door, then paused. $15,000. My eyes grew wide as saucers. That was an eye-popping amount of money. I began to stroke my goatee. I could do a lot with that amount of cash. 15 grand for one job? How hard could it be? You've got a deal. I agreed to start surveilling his wife that evening. I wish I'd never accepted that job. That day, just as the sun was beginning to set, I parked down the street a ways from his house. He lived in a quaint suburban neighborhood. I couldn't discern anything out of the ordinary, yet. I took a deep breath before stepping out of my car. I stuffed my hands in my pockets and began shuffling toward the couple's driveway. I kept my head low, pulling the bill of my baseball cap down. As inconspicuously as I could, I knelt down beside the blue SUV parked in the driveway and stuck a tracker inside the wheel well of the rear passenger side tire. With the less than legal part out of the way, I hurriedly scuttled back to my vehicle. Now, for the fun part, waiting. I sat in my car playing solitaire for about 35 minutes before a tall, blonde woman emerged from the house, making a beeline for her vehicle. Jessie looked good for her age. Like, really good. If I hadn't done my research, I would thought she was Louisa's daughter. The woman was pushing 40, but she could have passed for a college student. I wiped the drool from my chin and tapped on the tracking app installed on my phone before discreetly tailing her. It didn't take long until we arrived at our destination. I watched as Jessie's car rolled to a stop in front of an upscale house. It was luxurious. The lush, extensive lawn was perfectly trimmed, and the pillars extending from the porch exuded an air of grandeur that I couldn't fathom being able to afford. Jessie sauntered up to the front door and produced a key. She let herself in. I scratched my head. That was strange. I'd found nothing to suggest that the couple owned a second property, and certainly not one that nice. Well, back to solitaire. I didn't even have a chance to open the game before a lifted black truck screeched to a halt in the driveway. Even at my distance, I could hear country music blaring loudly over the speakers. A grimy man with a grungy white t-shirt and blue jeans hopped down from the driver's seat. He looked like he hadn't showered in weeks. I could practically smell the body odor and cigarette smoke wafting off of him. Gross. Gross. Oh, don't tell me she's cheating with that guy. The man approached the home with a confidence that he had no business possessing. He knocked on the door and stepped back. A few seconds passed with no response. He raised his fist to knock again, but the door swung open before he had a chance. The greaseball stepped inside, and the door shut quietly behind him. I decided to wait to fill Lewis in until I'd finished my investigation for the night. No need to lead him to the wrong conclusion if I didn't have all the information first. I thought about pulling out my phone and relaxing until I noticed any more activity from the house. No, I couldn't afford to be lazy, not with 15 big ones on the line. It wasn't hard to find dirt on the owner of that lavish home. Isabel Geralds was 30 years old, with no children, a master's degree in biology, and a dropped murder charge. Isabel's husband, a 63-year-old banker named Henry, had died under mysterious circumstances in the couple's home. All the evidence pointed to Isabel. It should have been an open and shut case, but somehow Izzy got off scot-free. Interesting. Why was Lewis's wife, a seemingly upstanding member of the community, hanging out with the suspected murderer? The whole thing felt off. As I would soon come to find out, it was. I scrambled to pull up the tracking app again. 2 figures emerged from the home. It was dark, and I couldn't see their faces, but I could tell they were women. That was odd. Where was Captain Sleazy? I watched as one of the women hopped into the driver's seat of the truck. I caught a brief glimpse of Jessie as she slid into the front seat of her car. She had a wide, satisfied grin plastered across her lips. I shuddered. I was beginning to see what Lewis meant when he said that she gave off a creepy vibe. The woman driving the truck, who I assumed was Isabel, peeled out of the driveway. Jessie waited for a couple minutes, then followed suit. I was beginning to get a sinking feeling that those two were up to something far worse than having an affair. I followed a few minutes behind them. We drove for what felt like an eternity. My heart thumped wildly with anticipation. Where were they going with this guy's truck? Around 45 minutes later, we arrived at a scrapyard on the outskirts of town. I didn't follow them inside the gate. I didn't need to. All the pieces had fallen into place. Lewis's wife was a murderer. I called him on the way home. I hoped it would be enough to satisfy him. Of course it wasn't. Hey, it's Detective Claxton. Hey, detective, did you, find anything? His voice was timid and weak. I could tell that he was dreading my response. I wished I could lie to him and tell him that all his worry was for nothing, but I couldn't. Yeah, I did, actually. Are you sitting down? If not, I'd highly suggest it. Yeah, I'm sitting. Just let me have it already. The suspense is killing me. I sighed. Well, he asked for it. Lewis, I don't think your wife is a demon. I think she's a murderer. The line went silent. I could tell that my revelation had smacked him like a ton of bricks. I gave him time to process the information. So, how do you know? I watched your wife and her friend lure a man into a house, then a few minutes later, they took his truck to a junkyard. Without him. If that's not proof that something's up, I don't know what is. Well, did you take any pictures? Crap, why hadn't I thought to do that? Some detective I am. I have my dash cam footage, but that's it. That's not enough. I need cold, hard evidence. I can't divorce her over hearsay. I pursed my lips. I was hoping he wouldn't say that. Understood. I'll follow her again tomorrow. Thank you, detective. Yep, you got it. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. Was this really worth it? Photo proof meant I would have to get closer, much closer, and I really didn't want to do that. I decided to sleep on it. If things got too dicey, I wouldn't hesitate to drop that job. It wasn't worth getting killed over, or worse. That night, I had the most vivid dream of my entire life. I awoke in my bed. My bedside lamp was on. I wearily rubbed my eyes as they adjusted to my surroundings. I glanced up, then stifled a scream. There was a woman standing at the foot of my bed. She was beautiful. Long blonde hair cascaded down her back in waves. She wore a red dress that hugged her tightly in all the right places. Her smile was so warm and inviting. Those ocean blue eyes shimmered with a familiarity that I couldn't quite place. And then it hit me. This was Jessie. She lightly bit her bottom lip, sending my heart racing. She gradually began to crawl toward me. I didn't fight it. Jessie had me in a trance, and she knew it. Before long, she was on top of me. Jessie softly scooped my hands into hers. My mouth hung open like a moron as she guided my hands to her waist. I was paralyzed as she leaned in close to my ear. "Do you want me?" I could feel myself nodding, even though I hadn't intended to. It was like I was a puppet and someone else was controlling the marionette. Jessie closed her eyes and went for the kill. I squeezed mine shut just before her lips grazed mine. I woke up in a cold sweat. What the hell was that? It felt so real. I wasn't an idiot, though. I began to get a sinking feeling that Louis was right about his wife, and that terrified me. I couldn't get back to sleep after that, whether due to anxiety or some sort of lingering effect from my dream. I didn't know. I groggily slunk out of bed and brewed a pot of coffee. This isn't worth it. I should just give up on this. I haven't even met this lady and I'm already seeing her in my dreams. Nope. I'm calling it quits. But 15 grand is a lot of money. I determined that I had to finish this thing. Louis deserved the truth. Right. Of course he did. And it was my job to deliver it to him. I was on edge all day. If Jessie was what I thought she was, then could she find me through my dreams? I didn't find anything online to affirm my fears, but you can never be too sure. Especially when 99% of people have never encountered that type of entity for themselves, and even less have lived to tell about it. Once dusk rolled around, I turned on the tracking app and headed to Louis's place. A sense of dread had sunk into my stomach like a stone. I really didn't want to go through with this. I waited for Jessie to come out of the house. She did, right on cue. I again followed her to Isabel's house. No surprises there. I parked in the same spot as the day before. It wasn't long before a lime green sports car pulled into Isabel's driveway. A man wearing a Metallica t-shirt stepped out of the vehicle. It wasn't sunny outside in the slightest, but he kept his shades on nonetheless. Those two really knew how to pick them. The man sashayed up to the door, and before long, he was pulled inside the home. I pursed my lips. Same routine, different day. I waited for around 30 minutes this time before Jessie returned to her car. Isabel took off in the Camaro, and Jessie followed suit. Now was my chance. I slipped a pair of black leather gloves on as I approached the house. I just needed to get in, uncover their ploy, and get out without being seen. Simple, right? I grabbed onto the door handle. There was no way they had. Click. The door opened with little resistance. Wow, that was easy. I stalked the hallway, searching for any sign of foul play. I glanced up to see a security camera pointing at me. Not that it mattered. My ski mask would be sure to conceal my identity. I continued my search. I determined that I needed to find the bedroom. That was where I was the most likely to find my evidence. I turned around, opting to look upstairs. I crept silently up the steps, wincing at every creaky floorboard. They weren't loud, but at that moment, the noise sounded thunderous in the empty home. I reached the top landing and scanned the dark hallway before me. At the end of the hall, a door was slightly cracked open, spilling warm yellow light into the unlit corridor. Bingo! That was what I needed. I tiptoed to the door, heart in my throat. This was it. I smiled as I thought about the massive payday I was in for. Just a few more minutes and everything would be worth my while. Or so I thought. The light from the room partially illuminated my face as I stepped into view. I pushed lightly on the door. It squeaked softly on its hinges as it gradually revealed the room to me. Upon first glance, it was spotless. A pristine look at what a 6-figure salary and solid business connections will earn you. The couple's king-sized bed was neatly made. Jewelry was strewn haphazardly around a gold box on the dresser. A photograph of Isabel and Henry sat on the nightstand. Their beaming faces sent a chill crawling down my spine. Something about Isabel's wide, jovial grin was just not natural. I continued my search. I needed to be quick. I still don't know what possessed me to do it, but I walked up to the window. I pulled back the blinds and gasped. The window had a clear view of the backyard, and in it, 12 mounds of displaced dirt. They'd been burying the bodies. I snapped a picture through the window and turned to leave. Even if that was the only shred of proof that I had, it should still be enough for Louis to confront his wife with, at the very least. The smug smirk plastered on my face quickly faded. Suddenly, I was falling. My foot had caught on the rug, and I was sent tumbling to the ground. What I discovered down there still sends me shivers. I opened my eyes, rubbing my temple. As soon as I did, I stifled a scream. I found myself face to face with a corpse. Its whole body was shriveled, like it had been sucked dry of all of its bodily fluids. Its hair had fallen out, only wispy, sporadic strands remaining. Its skin was ashen gray, splotches of fresh blood spattered across its face. But what terrified me more than any of that, the withered husk was wearing a pair of jet black shades and a graphic t-shirt clung loosely to its emaciated frame. I immediately bolted. Proof be damned. I didn't want anything to do with that place. I ran to my car as fast as my legs would carry me. I slammed it into drive and stomped on the gas. It wasn't until I reached my house that I stopped hyperventilating. I couldn't go through with it. I called Louis and told him that I was done. I didn't care about the money. It wasn't worth it. Louis was understandably upset, but eventually he relented. I packed my bags and bought a motel room for the night, just to be safe. I never should have gotten mixed up with the occult. I'm shivering as I'm typing this out. I don't think I have very long left. Whatever Jessie is, I think she's on to me, because I just got a text from a random number. Attached was a picture of a tracker and a caption that read, "Hello, detective. Are you missing something?" When I was 9 years old, my grandfather gave me a present. There was nothing extraordinary about it. Just a nondescript brown box with my name haphazardly scrawled atop it. Even so, my young self was enthralled by it. I wish he'd never given it to me. Now, Jonathan, before I hand this to you, I need you to make me a promise. Grandpa smirked, holding the parcel just out of my reach. What is it? I huffed, crossing my arms. Grandpa's expression instantly shifted. His jovial demeanor melted, leaving a cold, stern visage in its wake. I'd never seen anything like that before, and it frightened me. Promise me that you won't open this until your 18th birthday." My heart sank. Why was Grandpa dangling a gift in front of me if he didn't want me to open it for another 9 years? "But why?" I asked, tears welling in my eyes. "Look, kiddo, I'm getting old and I don't know how much longer I have left. I want to make sure that I get this to you before that day comes. This gift, it's special. I want you to be more mature once you open it so you'll use it wisely," he said, placing a loving hand on my shoulder. "But I don't want you to die, Grandpa. I love you." I couldn't contain my sobs any longer. I began wailing, fat sloppy tears tumbling down my cheeks. "Hey now, no need to cry. This is just a precaution, okay? We still have plenty of time together. I know what'll cheer you up." Grandpa grinned, that warm, tender smile cutting off my waterworks. "Ice cream!" That did the trick. All my worries washed away with a nice big bowl of cookies and cream. That day will always stand out in my mind, because contrary to Grandpa's reassurances, we did not have plenty of time left. He passed away 2 days later. Grandpa died due to complications from a triple bypass surgery he'd had 3 months prior. The stent in one of his arteries didn't hold up. He lost his life in the back of an ambulance just half a mile away from the hospital. I was devastated. Grandpa had always been such a rock in my life. He was my best friend, my confidant, my life guide, and I was completely lost without him. That month, I cried more than I ever had in my entire 9 years of existence. Grandpa was the first relative I had lost, which only made my struggle for closure that much more difficult. The funeral was a blur. Though I was absolutely crushed, it was nice to see how many people came to pay their respects. I was glad to know that Grandpa was so loved. I found myself alone in my room a lot after that. My eyes would often wander to the brown package. Though I came close on a multitude of occasions, I never opened it. I had to respect Grandpa's wishes. As the years passed on, I gradually forgot about the box. It had migrated to the top shelf of my closet. Soon, it wasn't even an afterthought. My priorities had shifted. Girls, video games, and my growing gang of buddies garnered my full attention. Before I knew it, my 18th birthday was upon me. By the time I was done celebrating with family and friends, I was exhausted. I collapsed onto my bed, sending a small tremor throughout the room. As if on cue, I heard something fall inside my closet. My eyes grew wide as dinner plates. Grandpa's gift. I bolted to the closet and threw open the door. There it was, lying face down among heaps of dirty clothes. I picked up the box, blowing off the thick layer of dust coating its packaging. My own hastily written name greeted me in black, faded letters. I didn't hesitate. I tore open the gift like a child on Christmas Day. 9 years. I'd waited 9 excruciating years for this moment. My jaw fell open when I laid eyes upon what lay within. Inside, shrouded in wrapping paper, was the most beautiful watch I had ever seen. It was ornately decorated. A glimmering gold band with a matching gold face shimmered up at me. The hands ticked meticulously around 12 elaborately emblazoned numbers. I was in awe. It all began to click. Grandpa wanted me to wait until I was older to open the gift so that I'd take care of it. Younger me probably would have been a bit more careless. I began to fasten the shiny gold band around my wrist when a piece of paper fluttered to the ground at my feet. I set the watch down along with the box and picked it up. Dear Jonathan, happy 18th birthday. I hope that I will be there to celebrate this monumental milestone alongside you. But if I'm not, know that I love you with all my heart. Though I may not be there in person, I will always be with you in spirit. Tears began trickling down my cheeks. Dozens and dozens of memories of our time together assaulted my brain all at once, like some sort of intense collage. I missed him so much, I almost put the paper down and locked the watch away for the night. But I forced myself to continue reading. I have entrusted you with my most valuable possession. It may look like an ordinary wristwatch, but its value is immeasurable. Below, I have included a small list of instructions and rules for wearing the watch. Please be mindful of its abilities and treat it with the utmost care. There is only one of its kind in existence. This watch has the ability to control time. There is a dial on the side of the watch. Pull this dial out to pause time. Turn it backward or forward until you reach your desired point. Then push the dial back in to resume. Use this sparingly. Do not travel forward or backward in time by more than a week. This could have serious implications on the time-space continuum. Do not use the watch for nefarious purposes. You're a good boy, so I know that won't be an issue. But just in case I have to spell it out for you, do not use the watch for the acquisition of large sums of money, sexual favors, or expensive worldly possessions. Read this part carefully. Whatever you do, make sure that the watch does not get damaged. As previously stated, this is a one-of-a-kind item. You do not want to meet the creature charged with fixing it. The price to do so is steep. I'm trusting you with this, Jonathan. Follow the instructions and you will prosper. Failure to do so will result in rather unpleasant consequences. Reap its benefits wisely. Again, have a happy birthday, grandson. Love, Grandpa. Was this a joke? Maybe Grandpa had some sort of degenerative disease that I hadn't picked up on. There was only one way to find out. I fastened the watch around my wrist. I turned it over a couple times, admiring its elegance. Grandpa sure did have good taste. I held my breath as I reached for the dial. This was it. The moment of truth. I pulled the dial out and nothing. The watch's hands stopped ticking, but other than that, I didn't notice anything strange. Must just be an ordinary watch, after all. I didn't even bother to push the dial back in. I began to trudge downstairs dejectedly. Even if the watch didn't have any supernatural abilities, at least Mom would think it was cool. I rounded the corner to the stairs and nearly tripped. I stopped in my tracks, mouth agape. I struggled to comprehend the scene before me. Mom had her back to me. She was standing over a pot, but the steam was frozen in place. It wasn't moving, and neither was Mom. I continued to drink in my surroundings. The TV was paused between scenes of Dad's favorite show. He was seated in his favorite armchair, glancing down at his phone. A mug of green tea was raised halfway to his lips. But that meant... I snapped out of my stupor, pushing the dial back in. Everything picked up right where it had left off, like nothing had happened. An actor screamed through the television at some comically ignorant street thug. Dad loudly sipped his tea, and Mom hummed a soft tune as steam wafted up from the pot. It worked. It really worked. I tried it again just to be sure. Everything froze, just like it had the first time. A smile began to inch its way across my lips. I was going to have a lot of fun with this thing. The remainder of the weekend passed about as you would expect. I used the watch whenever it benefited me. I skipped past Mom's 100th lecture of the week on why vaping is bad. I don't even vape. I rewound my turns in our weekly board game to shift the odds in my favor. I paused time to fart in a crowded elevator. You get the drift. I was having the time of my life. When Monday rolled around, I was ecstatic. I'd been dealing with some particularly nasty bullies, and I was really looking forward to teaching them a lesson. I skipped through all my morning classes and resumed right at lunchtime. I wasn't hungry. Well, not for food. I was hungry for revenge. It didn't take long before the bastards waddled into the cafeteria and sauntered straight up to me. Carson and Dylan were on the heavier side. They liked to use their weight to their advantage, especially against vertically challenged kids such as myself. Sup, bitch boy. That sandwich of yours is looking pretty tasty. I hope you don't mind if I take a few bites, Carson said, shoving me aside while licking his crusty lips. I grinned, reaching for the watch. I don't mind one bit, I replied, pulling out the dial. I watched as Carson's grubby hand froze right before it grabbed hold of my turkey sandwich. The noisy cafeteria instantly went deathly silent. Hundreds of kids sat still as statues, all focused on their own menial activities. Though I had all the time in the world, I didn't hesitate. I shot up from my seat and began punching Carson hard in the face. Dylan was next. I released all the pent-up rage that had been bubbling inside me for the majority of my senior year. I showed them no mercy. After the months of torment they'd put me through, I wanted those two to suffer. Once I was done beating the ever-loving crap out of them, I took Carson's arms and fashioned them around Dylan's waist. I gave Carson a wedgie, then clasped Dylan's fingers around his underwear. Next, I pushed their faces together until their chubby lips were touching. I patted myself on the back. It was so satisfying to see them like that. And it was even more satisfying when I pushed the dial back in. I was elated when kids began pointing and laughing. Hey, look at those two. Gross. You, get a room. Ugh, that's disgusting. The pair immediately recoiled. They were dumbstruck. The pure shock on their faces was priceless. My heart raced with excitement as the pain began to sink in. Tears spilled down Carson's cheeks. Dylan placed a hand over his left eye, staring daggers at me with his good one. He leaned in close and whispered into my ear. I know you did this somehow. This isn't over. Oh, I'm so scared. Are you and your lover going to kiss me to death? Dylan raised a fist, but thought better of it. He lowered his head in defeat. We'll make you pay. You'll see. The bullies both flipped me off as they turned to leave. They trudged out of the cafeteria, rubbing their bruised faces as kids relentlessly hurled insults at them. I almost felt kind of bad for them until I remember how shitty they'd been to me, that is. The rest of my day was going by without a hitch. Thanks to the watch, I had successfully found the answer key to the science test I'd forgotten to study for, and I ensured that I would pass with flying colors. I was shooting my shot with one of the cutest cheerleaders in school when it happened. So I was thinking maybe you and I could catch a movie this Saturday. You know, like if you're Slam. Pain streaked across the right side of my face as I was brutally bashed into a locker. My arms were pinned to my side and I couldn't move. Sorry, Jonathan. I don't date losers like you, Jenny said as she pretentiously flipped her hair behind her and walked away. I turned my attention to my attackers. What the hell? I had a decent shot with her before. Smack. A fist connected with my face. I was seeing stars. Shut up. I know it was you. You seriously embarrassed us earlier. I'm gonna kick your teeth in. Carson and Dylan, just as I'd suspected. My heart thumped like a jackhammer in my chest. I couldn't reach the watch. Unless a teacher just happened to walk by, I was screwed. And then the worst possible outcome played out. That's a pretty nice watch you've got there. Maybe I'll take that as a down payment. Carson snickered, reaching for my wrist. No, leave the watch alone. I growled, thrashing wildly to keep it out of his grasp. It was no use. I can see that this watch has a lot of value to you. It'd be a damn shame if something was to happen to it. A wide, manic grin stretched across Carson's lips. My eyes grew wide as saucers. No, this couldn't be happening. Carson grabbed my wrist and began slamming the watch against the locker. He smashed it over and over again. Once, twice, 3 times. I shut my eyes before every blow, and then, the moment I had been dreading, everything stopped. I slowly forced my eyes open. Time had been paused. I snatched my wrist away from Carson and wiggled out of Dylan's grip. My heart plummeted into my stomach when I glanced down at the watch. Shards of glass littered the floor. The hands had stopped ticking. The hour hand was mangled, facing directly up in the air. I nearly passed out when I looked at the side of the watch. The dial was completely missing. I frantically searched for it, eventually finding it along with the debris on the ground. I tried to shove it back in. No effect. I don't know how long I've been here. I think it's been at least a week, but I can't be certain. There's no way to gauge the passing of time when it's been paused like this. I've got all the necessities that I need to live, but I'm terrified. Not at the notion that time will never resume. No, I'm afraid that it will. I've been seeing him. The watch repairman that Grandpa mentioned in his letter. He started off far away, but he's getting closer and closer. No matter how far I run, no matter where I hide, he always finds me. Just the sight of him sends fear coursing through every fiber of my being. Because this man, this thing, it has no face. I have a feeling that I won't survive when it catches up to me, so I need to get my story out there. I've preset this post to upload tomorrow. That way, if time does resume, this story should get out to the world. If you're reading this, it's probably too late for me. Please, for the love of all things holy, if this watch somehow falls into your possession, don't use it. Throw it in a storage closet and forget the damn thing even exists, because its consequences are far too severe.